It may have taken us a couple of seasons to get started, but the Maltese League is finally starting to get built. So let's talk about that. We have big plans for this summer transfer window based on a massive tactical change, which we'll be discussing later in the video. So naturally, we'll be engaging ourselves in a little bit of retail therapy over on stream right about now. So join us over there for that after you've caught up over here. The VODs of all the streams can of course be found on the second channel. They go out the day after every stream. Link in the description. You know the drill. As I said on the last one of these videos, I'm still working ridiculously hard on a massive video project that will be out on this channel sometime in the next couple of weeks. So again, thank you for your patience for that. That's the reason for the reduced uploads, and I genuinely cannot wait to show you it. So we came into season 6 of Building a Nation with Sirens in Malta with a very simple task. We need to make a dent and get some juicy coefficient points for Malta to slowly start bringing us up the charts, and hope that the other Maltese sides would be able to join us in that endeavor. We were wiping away an absolutely appalling season from a couple of years ago, meaning that pretty much any points we got this year would see us rocket up the charts. As always, we've been doing bits in the transfer window, and I think we've made some absolutely spectacularly good signings over the last calendar year. There's also been some updates towards stuff to do with the loan farm due to some of our more eclectic signings, and there's a massive update on that as we were testing a theory, but we'll get to that a little bit later, because first I want to start with players who have left the club over the last calendar year, and also talk about a player who hasn't, but will, but might, but we'll get to it. The first of those outs was Mark Leonard. You remember him from a couple of seasons ago. We signed him on a bit of a whim, gave him a contract that we weren't super pleased with, and he was costing us a lot of money and also wanted star player, and we kind of couldn't help but upset him a lot of the time. And so we decided that actually this was the summer to get rid. And this is the first time truly that a club has actually paid anywhere close to even like the lower end of the value of one of our players, which is I guess good news, particularly as we know that there's going to be a huge value drop coming in about 2 years time. For those of you that are unaware, in a lot of smaller league saves, whether they be custom databases or not, even ones that are in the base game, around 2031, if you get that far, you'll notice that all of your player values will just drop through the floor. And no one has been able to offer an explanation as to why that happens. That will definitely happen in this save, so we're sort of trying to make the most of our slightly inflated values while we still can. And that's why Mark Leonard was sold. It's actually £900,000. The rest is in add-ons, and you might look at that and go, why on earth would you sell a player of that quality? And honestly, given some of the things that we've changed, basically the tactics stuff towards the end of the season, it is a slightly regretful move, but we kind of just needed the money to keep financing things and keep things going at the time, so it was still good cash to get. Another out was Mateus Carrera, who joined Sportivo Luqueño back, I believe, in his native Paraguay, although I can't be sure about that. Are they Paraguayan? I believe they are. Yes, they definitely are. He never really settled in Malta, constantly had adaptability issues, as you can see from his cons here. Basically wanted to go home all the time, and that meant that no matter what we did, he was always angry at us, essentially. And in the end, we got £600,000. It's more like 450, but still, it's nice money, and considering we only paid 125,000, it was not bad base of business for us, and we had other players that we felt could suit us. And again, it was more cash. Next is a strange one. Mohamed El Shazli, the club's vice captain. Now, this is a weird one because, as you'll see, he's not actually left the club. He's on loan, and Pyramids do have an option to buy him permanently from us. It's nowhere near for the amount of money that the game is quoting. I believe the option, if they want him, is like £1 million, which would still be great money, but it's not the 10 to 11 million pounds that he's there. And I don't know if they're even going to take up the option at that point, but we'll have to see on that one. Basically, he complained a lot about football at the start of the season when he had that sort of situation you run into with players when they're not match fit, they're injured, they're coming back from injury, and you're slowly weaning them back in. They then complain because you're not starting them in matches, even though they would get injured if they were. They complain. He wanted a loan move. We decided to make it happen for him, and so he's gone out on loan this season to Pyramids. He's actually played reasonably well for them, so there is a chance that they may take up that option. We'll get another £1 million out of the deal, which would be nice considering they have been paying for the loan as well. So good money there, just not the 10 to 11 million that you're seeing there. Stefan Alic has also left the club. It's hilarious now that he's left that our scouts have decided to judge his potential to be massive again, because of course they have. He's left for, I believe it's around £525,000. It was some more good cash for us. He's always been a bit of a thorn in our side, constantly getting red cards, just causing trouble around the dressing room. It's just nice to get rid. And again, all of these guys were players that, mostly anyway, were brought in on free transfers using that method from the start of the save, so it's all just pure profit. And the last out is Bokar Kasama. We signed him last summer, if you remember, for I believe £97,000. We've moved him on to Voluntari for £325,000, so still tripled our cash. Again, he was one of those players that we signed on a massive contract, comparatively speaking, especially his squad status, that we simply could never fulfill. And again, with the slight tactical tweaks we've made this season, he might have actually suited our new style. while, but you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And needless to say, you can see we brought in some really good money from transfers out, which has allowed us to really fund our endeavours. And even though a lot of the players I'm going to show you in a minute haven't cost us a lot of money, there's a lot of future transfers that do join us this summer that have cost us, including our first ever £1 million signing. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So now I said there was a situation brewing about a player that was potentially going to leave for big money. So let's discuss that. And that is Ronnie Shallow, our Israeli striker extraordinaire. I mean, you can see from his stats this season as well, 26 goals, 18 assists. 18 assists from striker, which is wild to me. So what's that? 44 goal contributions in 40 matches. He's been utterly amazing. And the problem we had is in January, we got a massive bid, and I mean massive bid, from the Saudi club Al Tau of £10 million for him. And at the time, I basically said, we don't need the cash at this current point because no player that we could possibly buy would ever come into that range currently. And by the time we're able to afford those players, we'll be making that money elsewhere. And I didn't want to lose a guy that was basically the linchpin of our entire team and set the entire save back a couple of seasons. Now, naturally, of course, us turning him down made him extremely annoyed at us. So much so that he then decided that he was going to run down his contract and leave for free. Oof, you might say, and you'd be right. Towards the end of the window, we did decide to try and offer him back out again and see if we could maybe scramble up a little bit more money for him, but then unfortunately, given our desperation, they only came back in with a £3 million bid, and I just felt insulted at that point. £7 million just disappeared. I think he is still wanted by them as well. No, it's a different one. No, it's Al Tawoon that now want him. Point being, he still has another year left on his deal, and our plan is basically to try and find a replacement that is going to suit our system, and there is a new system that he's been playing in, so more on that in a second, or we're just going to have to let him run that contract down and hope that we can try and sort something out. It would suck to lose that kind of money, but sometimes it's just, you don't want to sell your best players, even if it means that you end up, you know, losing them for free, because he's just been so important to this team, and I feel like the £3 million wasn't enough, because I feel like the goals and the way that he plays is worth more money to us over the course of a year, just with the wins and the progress he gets us in European competitions. That makes that money back. And until we can find a replacement, he is absolutely staying. And you never know, maybe we could turn it around, though very rarely when you see the FRT icon can you ever turn it around. There are a couple of scenarios though, and we're just preying on those. So there, that's the Ronnie situation. And yes, we did miss out on £10 million. I also want to draw your attention to something rather interesting, is that obviously you know that Luta were promoted to the top flight last year as champions. Fantastic side, really excited to see what they would do. And on the very first couple of days of the transfer window, we just did what we've been doing as always, except this time we removed all of our loanees from the dev list and just let them be separate so that we could handle each loan on their own. We then mass offered them out, and well, the first day of the window we were just bombarded with loan offers, and you'll see here, well, that Luta, they put in loans, I think, for 8 or 9 of our players right at the start of the summer transfer window, and they all moved, which meant that Luta went from being a promoted side to being second favourite for the league, which is utterly amazing, and it just shows you how important the loan farm can be in terms of improving the squads that these teams have. And this brings us to a theory that I've been working on over the course of this year, because I know a lot of you have struggled to get your players out on loan, and we've been suffering from the same issues now that we've got a few seasons in. It was fine at the start, but now it has become a real problem, and this is what I've noticed. It seems to me that with the new AI squad building stuff that SI talked about at the start of the year, I think that what it seems to do is at the start, before every window, both summer and winter, it seems that the squads of the teams in the background, they're planning out what roles they need and what players they need for those squads. And then when the windows open, they're extremely active to fill those slots. And if you offer out all of the players that you need to get on loan at the very, very start of the window, like the first day the window opens for you, both summer and winter, you seem to get bombarded with loan offers, especially from newly promoted sides in this case. That might be a blip though. We don't know if it's going to happen this year again as well. But if it does, that would be kind of fascinating. And then once all those guys happen, some of them will go through, some of them won't. You tend to get like a nice 10 to 12 chunk of loans at the very start of the window. Then maybe 1 or 2 more over the rest of the window, but not from you offering them out, just from them up coming to you at random points. And the same thing happened in January this year as well. So it seems like they've definitely changed some stuff in the background around the ways that the clubs build their squads. And yeah, you kind of just gotta go ham in the first couple of days of each window to get those players out on loan. And it does seem to work a lot better, but that's really all we've got for you on that one. But it has allowed us to build the loan farm up quite nicely this year to close to 60 players out on loan, and that's good progress. We'll try it again this year and see if the same sort of results have to happen. But more updates to come in future seasons if we've actually got something there. So now that brings us to the players that we've brought in. I'm also going to give you a little preview of some of the guys that haven't actually joined us yet, but have cost us quite a lot more money, as we've been starting to up our spending a little bit as we've moved over to team report scouting for the latter stages of this year, and actually found some pretty good success with it. But the first player to join us was Ramiro Garin, an Argentinian that joined us from Sporting Barracas in, I believe, Argentina Argentina for £61,000. Most of our signings this year have been paid because we're just at a point now where the amateurs and the free guys can't really cut it anymore. A fantastic defensive midfielder, tackling a little bit on the low side from him, but he's decently technical. We very much like him indeed, and he's actually played a good amount this year. And the reason for that is because our new tactical setup actually involves a defensive midfielder. Probably won't be him in the long term, but for 61k, can't go wrong. Next, we brought in Johanna Wambani, a Kenyan defender, and basically we were still looking at players from slightly more interesting nationalities. He came up, 19, well, he's 18 when we signed him from Kenya. Now, he was one of the guys that when the January system came around, he was ready for loan. We offered him out straight away, and he got a loan to a top flight club in Birkirkara, and it shows that we can still get these kind of loans out, and that's the most important thing. First day of the window, basically, get all your players ready, offer them straight out. And there's another trick that I want to talk to you about later when we get to the loan farm too, when it comes to the squad status, because I know a lot of you have had the same problem that we have, where every time a loan bid comes in, they want fringe player. We found a way around it. We did make a couple of free signings, and one of those was Amjad Khalifa, a Syrian centre-back who we just kind of liked the look of, and you can sort of see why. I feel like he possibly will get Syria caps. Really nice mentals, physicals are okay, technicals are solid, and you can see that he's actually played 16 league games for us this season in that back line. Just nice having a left footer in there too, which is really, really helpful. Despite being 5'11", that 12 jumping reach has really just helped him out. Next, though, is a massive signing that we could not believe our eyes. And this is he. This is Paulo Vidazinha. He was released by Canalas in the summer. This isn't even really one of those like amateur agent guys. This was a free transfer that was completely released by his club. I suspect it's because he forced the move, but his agent brought him to us. And at the time, he was wanted by Porto and Milan. And we thought, well, we might as well put a bid in, because he does look like a fabulous player that can play all the way down that right-hand side for us, given other ideas that we might have in the bag. So we decided to put a bid in. And remarkably, none of them came in for him, and he actually signed for us on a permanent deal, on a 3-year well, it's 4 years at the time, and he still has 3 years left on his deal. Now, you'll note that he is actually wanted again. And would you believe, it's by Porto and Milan. I shit you not, it's the exact same teams that wanted him when he was free, now want him, now that they have to pay us potentially up to £3 million. Now, obviously, we know that it would be more like 1.2, but I really don't want to lose him, because look at the season he's had. 15 assists while playing as a right back is utterly wild. I mean, it's mostly right wing back now that we've made a slight tactical tweak, but he has been probably the most important player in the new Sirens this year, and I'll talk to you more about that when we get to the tactics, but he's been the linchpin of the new system, basically. My God, he's good. Next is another signing that we've been incredibly pleased with. This one came about purely by accident. So basically, the team he's from, Apaches in Cameroon. I have a football shirt from them, which I bought off Classic Football Shirts several years ago, and I was trying to remember the name of the team that I'd bought the shirt for, and chat reminded me that it was them. So we just randomly looked at their squad, saw that they had a player as a hot prospect and key player, him, so we decided to scout him. Turns out he was unbelievable, and so we ended up paying £100,000 for him. Now, initially he wouldn't even join us, but then after some convincing, and I think after we signed Vidazinha, the squad status or squad strength moved up sufficiently that he was willing to talk to us. Now, we are paying him £3,300 a week, but you can see why. This guy is a midfield machine. Utterly unbelievable footballer. Hope to get him on a new contract this summer to push that wage up even more, to get us a bit more long-term security, because I don't believe he has... Oh, he does! Well, that's happening. That will give us, I think that's actually maybe a 2-year extension on him as well, which would be fabulous. And you can see this year, 15 goals and 10 assists across all competitions. He's utterly amazing. We also brought in Frank Basala. Now, part of the reason we were doing this, and this was a little bit of a 500 IQ play from us in many ways. You know, sometimes when you try to sign a player and they say, hey, I want you to bring in someone to help me settle. So this was him. This is Frank Basala. He was brought in to help Pierre Kamga settle. But the key thing was, we were already signing Frank Basala when Kamga, that whole situation came about. So what we did is, knowing that they were both Cameroonian and knowing that this would fulfill the promise, we just delayed the transfer of Frank Basala for an extra week, waited for Kamga to come in, then signed Frank Basala, and it fulfilled the promise. It's cheesy, but we managed to make it work, and so he's in now for £100,000 and has actually played some football for us. Nice. Next, though, is a player that I am supremely excited about, and this is he. This is Julian Palacio, a Colombian left wing back. Now, he was an amateur non-contract player, and honestly, I think he might be the best one of those I've ever seen, frankly. At 18 years old, he was 17 when he actually joined us, I believe. Yeah, no, he was 18, but he was 17 when we signed him. And you can see he's just everything. His technicals are the only thing that let him down a little bit, but he's so young and seems to have decent potential ceiling that he can just get better and better in that. His physicals are fantastic. He's good on both feet. Unflappable personality, which means there's a decent level of professionalism in there too. He is going to be an unbelievable footballer, and I am bewildered that he would even want to sign for us, but he did on a free transfer, and I don't think I'm going to find a better amateur non-contract player in this entire save, because he is a god, and I can't wait to see once he's actually finished training the wingback role. He can even cover centre-back with 15 jumping reach. We also picked up Ousmane Haidara, who's also a wingback in there too, on a free transfer from JMG in Mali, and he's actually played a lot more than you would expect over the second half of the season, because he can play that wingback role. He's a little tired at the moment, but 2 goals and 4 assists in 7 starts from wingback is amazing, and he's only on £200 a week. We couldn't really say no to a bit of Ousmane. Another rock at the back for us this season is a £170,000 signing, Inter's Lignon from the Ivory Coast, signed from Plateau. The main reason we liked him basically is he's 6'4" and has 19 heading. You can't teach 6'4". Sorry, 19 heading, 19 jumping reach, amazing tackling and marking. It's only his heading that lets him down, and we've got him on aerial training, and I suspect there's no reason why we can't get that up to at least 13 over the next couple of seasons and make him into a sensational centre-back for us. And since he joined us in January, he has been absolutely brilliant, and I love him. He just wins everything in the air. And the last signing we made was Dylan Gorosito, an Argentinian, 23-year-old Argentinian wingback. And again, this was mostly after we'd moved over to a new tactic, and we just needed an extra body that could actually fulfill that role. So we were happy to pay him that for a season, just to sort of bide our time, basically. He'll probably just leave on a free in next summer, honestly. But in the meantime, it gave us a bit more backup, and that actually completes our transfers. There was like a load of other random freebies that are mostly just players for the loan farm to see if they would work, but we really don't have time to go through all of those. These are the guys that are actually making an impact in our squad currently, and I feel like those are the ones that are most important to highlight. But you can really see how we've definitely progressed in the right directions with this now. The league this season was much more of a formality, and we did expect that to start happening eventually. Hamrun's manager left them in the summer, weirdly not with another job lined up. He just went, screw you guys, I'm out. And as a result, we expected them to drop off, which is exactly what happened. And that meant that we've not actually decided to go through the league in proper detail this time, because there's just less to show. They were unable to replicate the success they had in recent seasons. Then again, 59 points is still an extremely good tally. They still only dropped like just over 10-15 points this season in total, which is wild. We actually had a worse season in many ways this year, as we did lose 2 games, including to Hamrun, and also randomly to relegated Sweetie. That was just a really strange one. Not exactly sure what happened there, but we did lose it. But I would argue that we were actually better this season. We were just scoring way more goals, looking far better overall. And we won the league only by 13 points. There's only 3 more than last year. But the gap was like up to 14 and 15 at various points. So we were never really in any danger. Hamrun still came 16 points clear of 3rd place Zabar, who will play in Europe for us next year. And Birkirkara worked their way back into Europe, despite having a negative goal difference. But I feel like the loans that they had definitely helped. Luta, in the end, actually ended up coming 7th, but we're only 3 points off the European places with their loan army, and I expect that they will strengthen in the summer as well and get even better. So I expect they could be a real challenging team in the future, especially as they were able to sign a guy that we wanted to sign a couple of years ago, who was still like 4 stars in our squad, and yet weirdly would sign for them on £150 a week on like rotation role, whereas for us he wanted to be like a star player on £3,000 a week. It's weird how that happens, but hey, it benefits them, so we don't care. That being said, in spite of us not focusing so much, there has still been some absolutely wild stuff happening in the league this season. We do love a good squandering of a chance like that. Aren't you glad we watched this game, chat? So the keeper picks the ball up after our player overruns it, throws it out to his player, who just passes it into the goal. But no, there's no... Oh, that's actually... What the... Hang on a minute. The game has just cheated. Honestly, I just pops it over the top and Charlie... Oh yeah, let me just casually run at 1,000 miles an hour. Also, how is my goalkeeper not coming to collect that? Cat of me reading rom-coms constantly. Oh my god, it's a 7-on-1 breakaway. Somebody pop... Where are you going, Mohammed? Bro, you had 6... And the award for the worst counter-attack of all time goes to Mohamed Afifi. Floriano as well, also relegated, and relegated hard. I don't know what's happened to them. They were in Europe, I think, 2 seasons ago. They just yo-yo from like good to bad to good to bad. Last year they were kind of bad, and this year they just got even worse and have now been relegated out of the top flight. And I believe Tarshin actually survived on the final day in the end. I'm not even sure about that. Either way, it's not been a great time for some of the clubs that were in Europe this season. Nashar coming 8th and Tarshin just about surviving. And one thing we really need in this save now is consistent 3rd and 4th place teams that get in there every year. So us and Hamrun, great, can perform in Europe, but the others, when they constantly go in and out of those spots, it means there's no room for growth for them a lot of the time because they're always fighting different battles. So we need some consistency, and Birkirkara, I think, can be one of those teams, maybe even Zabar. In the second tier, Malta come back up, I think at the first time of asking, but they brought Senleia with them. So we're going to have another side, a new to the top flight in this save at least. They were in the top flight a few seasons before the start of this save. Sangwon as well, nearly got in there too. Gajira and Masterslock still sort of scrounging around in there. Moster looking like there's no sign of them getting promoted again. So it isn't, even with the parachute payments, there's no signs that these teams are just going to bounce straight back up again every single time. It seems like they're at least bringing one new team with them every single time now, which is kind of nice. Right, so let's talk tactics. And the reason for this is we wanted to try something a little bit different because the 4-4-2 was very open, which is great, but in Europe it was definitely costing us. We wanted a more successful system that could be stable, but still create really fun football to play. And after a few different iterations, one of which actually included us having a winger here and then trying to make stuff work on that side of things, eventually we just went to a second striker because we do have two fantastic strikers and it'd be silly not to actually use them. And this is what we ended up with. Yes, we're playing a libero. Of course we are. No questions. I will not be taking questions at this time. We have a halfback that will slot in when we're actually in possession. But the key thing about this system is the wingbacks, basically. And one other thing about these roles, which are very strange, but it seems to work. Basically, both wingbacks are set to cross to the target forward. We don't have a target forward, but what they seem to do is put the ball into an amazing position where our players can just get tap in after tap in, and we play some beautiful football doing this. And naturally, because it's me, we've brought back a trequartista. So just a libero and a trequartista in the Maltese league. Would you expect anything less? Either way, we tested this system for the final 10 games of the season and it was brilliant. Just hiding any of the European stuff so you don't get spoilers for that. So basically, we decided to start testing it around about here. Our first attempt was against Tarshin, but that was with a slightly different system and it was okay. Then we played another version of it against Hamrun and lost the game, unfortunately. Then came up with the system that you're seeing now, and you could see that we've scored 3 or more in every single match that we played this system in, and only scored less than 4 in one single match against Gudja, where we absolutely smashed them, basically. And it has been fabulous. We just score so many goals. They're fun goals too. The football is amazing and it's just really good to watch. So that brings us to Europe. And this year, of course, with us being the league champions, we got to play in the Champions League via the Champions Path, which is great because if you drop down, you tend to play against some relatively poor sides. And we felt that at the minimum, we should be looking at Conference League group stages, as we felt that we could potentially do pretty damn well in it. And for reasons that I am utterly baffled by, for some reason, the game won't let me see the actual full details, even though it has done in every previous season when we've played in these rounds. And I always do these videos on the same day. So I don't know why it's not letting me show the fixtures there, and that's really annoying, and I do apologise for that. It just means I can't show you the full breakdowns of these, which is ridiculously annoying. I have no idea why it's done that. It's usually due to, like, the amount of buffer it keeps, but normally that's fine. Really odd. Have to be careful with that next time. Don't know why that's happened. Needless to say, we lost the first leg against Bati Borisov 3-0 with an early red card, then won the second leg 5-0 to progress easily. We then beat Vikingur of Reykjavik to go through to the third round of Champions League, which meant that we were guaranteed some kind of group stage, but then lost to Rangers, as you can see here. Not particularly ideal for us. Did get a couple of late ones and looked a lot better, but that at least meant that we went into the playoff round of the Europa League, which the game will let me show you, as we drew Sukniska Niksic of literally the easiest draw we could have possibly got. Went to Montenegro, I think it's Montenegro, and won 6-1 away from home. The Kangaroo grabbed himself 2 more goals. Shallow scored, Alassas scored, the Assassin, and Guerrero. Now, also, you might be thinking to yourself, hang on a minute, that new system has no wingers in. Yeah, it does. And unfortunately, it just seems to work so much better that we may have to do some complete squad overhaul in the summer to either get those guys retraining, and some of them will definitely fit in, or some of them might just have to be sold. And it's a shame, but I feel like it will make us better overall. Safe in the knowledge of that, we then decided to balls it up at home against them by losing 6-4. I said it was easy. I don't know. I've never seen complacency like it. We lost 6-4 to a team that we've beaten 6-1 away from home and dominated them. They deserve the win. 6-4 maybe not, but then absolutely crazy to win 10-7 on aggregate. They just could not stop scoring against us, and no matter what our strikers did, it was just not enough. The defenders were all over the place in this game. And you'll see that Vidazinia had an absolute mare in this one. He really didn't come into his own for us until the second half of the year. Almost all of the assists that you'll have seen from him, those 15, came after January, which is mad. But that ended up putting us in the Europa League group stage. Now, you remember the last time we went into the Europa League groups, we won our first match against HJK and then lost the other 7, getting a grand total of 3 points. Our biggest aim this time around was just to do better than 3 points. And we got off to a poor start at home against Aruka. Obviously, Kamga scored that beautiful goal for us and John got one as well, but they were able to get the win. And I would say that it was a bit fortunate. I feel like a draw would have been a fairer result here. So we've always struggled in the Europa League to get the results to match up to the statistics of matches. It's obviously small sample sizes a lot of the time, but we never quite feel like we get what we deserve a lot of the time. And today was a similar story. I thought we were a good value for a point. Then things got a little bit worse for us as we went to Romania against Farrell. And, well, we were 2-0 up, absolutely hammering them. Kamga scored again. Guerrero scored again. We were dominating them. They had basically 0 chances up until their first goal from Popescu. Then they got on from Mateus Santos. And for some reason, our legs just fell out of us towards the end of this match. And we dropped points in another game that we should have won. So we had 1 point when, frankly, we probably should have had 4 at this stage. And it's so disappointing. But that's life. They were the other pot 4 side, I believe. And then reality hit us, and it hit us really hard as we travelled to France to play against Rennes. Got absolutely obliterated by them 4-0. We got a red card too, but it wasn't really that important. They also missed a penalty in this game when their player tried a Panenka, so it could have been even worse. But then came the biggest result in the history of this save. Trabzonspor 2, Sirens 6. I don't know how we managed this, but You'll note as well that Roel Platt, a player from a few seasons ago, he was our 7th choice striker in this match, and he was forced to play up front for us. Or was he? No, I think he played off the left-hand side. He played on the left wing spot for us in this game because we had so few players available. And then Bro went and scored a hat-trick in this game. I think he also got an assist. No, he didn't. He just scored a hat-trick in this one, which was absolutely unbelievable. We deserved the win. 6-2, obviously, definitely not. But we did deserve the win, and we actually got it this time. And a hat-trick from Platty is wild. Particularly as before the game, I predicted that it was going to go appallingly, and chat were like, no, trust in the Platt. And they were right. Then we hosted Manchester United and got exactly what you'd expect. A 3-1 defeat. But 3-1 defeat, look at the stats for this game. We were not that awful. We created stuff. Christian Rodriguez scored against them with a header. They scored 2 goals from corners and another one from the second phase of a corner in this game. It was really only corners that saw them break us down here. We just weren't quite as strong as we could have been. When you look at the team that they put out against us too, to only lose 3-1, I'm taking that. We also earned like £600,000 in gate receipts for this because we were playing at the national team stadium, which is lovely. Then another disappointing one. A 1-0 defeat at home against Slovan Bratislava, and this game would prove to be pivotal in many ways. Alexander Travic got their goal in the 40th minute. We were pretty decent. I would argue a definitely good value for a point in this one, but then such is life, and particularly with counter-attacks like this. Wait a minute, surely they've not... Come on, John. John, you're one of the fastest players on the pitch. Why are we so slow here? And it left us in a pretty sticky situation. We had, what's that, 4 points from these games, and we're looking pretty unlikely to qualify. That was until we pulled off a miracle, and all of that XG that we'd stored up and not used, well, it didn't get used here either, but at the very least, we kind of managed to balance the books a little bit by winning in Portugal against Braga. 2 goals from Simon Banza weren't enough, as Guerrero and Miroslav Lucic got us the goals. We didn't deserve the win. We didn't even deserve a draw out of this one, but we'll take it given the results we'd had earlier, and that put us onto 7 points going into the final day, and we were 24th, meaning that if we could just beat FC Copenhagen, we would qualify for the next round. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. Ronaldo Cespedes gave us an early lead, and we actually played very well in the first half of this one. Missed a lot of chances, but then it was just an onslaught in the second half from them. Berger Merlin got the equaliser, albeit very fortunate. Keeper should have had it. He hits it off the post, bounces back to him, puts it into an empty net. Sucks, but it happens, and a 1-1 draw in the end. So that takes us to 8 points, but was that enough? No, it wasn't. We ended up coming 26th in the end with 8 points from 8 matches, but you can see the steps up from last time. We got 3 points last time we were in here. This time we got 8, and we only didn't qualify based on goal difference. That 4-0 defeat against Reims was the only thing that kept us out of there, really. If we'd only lost that 1-0, we'd have probably had them on goals scored. Actually, no, because Slavia Prague scored 20 goals. That's wild. So a good points haul for us in terms of coefficient and whatnot, but how did our Maltese friends get along? Nashar were in the first round of the Conference League and unfortunately came up against Icelandic side Breidablik. They managed to get a 2-2 draw in Iceland, but then lost the home leg, and thus leads to my point about we needing consistent sides in this because it's another first round exit for them. Tarshin Rainbows sadly didn't fare any better. They did actually draw both legs against Neman Grodno, but then narrowly went out on penalties in the first round. I still feel like they're getting closer, and just a bit of luck could potentially come into play. Hopefully we'll get that luck next year, particularly with the Zabar and Bikikara in these rounds. I just think they're better teams. And as always, that placed all of our hopes on Hamrun, who were able to skate through the early rounds of qualifying very, very easily, getting wins against a Samaranese side and an Albanian team, respectively. I don't think they even conceded a goal in there. But then things got much harder as they drew Norwegian side Strømsgodset, who are legitimately an actual decent team. And remarkably, Hamrun pulled off the mother of all results, a 1-0 aggregate victory where their goalkeeper was the man of the match in both games against them, which is unbelievable scenes to put Hamrun into the playoff round where they would face Greek side Panathinaikos. Surely a bridge too far, but good progress to be made. And that was until they won the home leg 2-1, but sadly weren't able to do it in Greece and lost 3-0 on the night, and that was a 4-2 loss on aggregate. But you can see how close they were to getting in there through the other path, and I think they're really only a season, maybe 2 at max, from being able to do that on the regular, and that makes me very happy indeed. But as for the coefficient, it was a superb year for us. Now, you might look at that and go, 4.5 isn't that good, but it's the best year we've had in the save, and more importantly, it was going to replace a 1.3 year. So just huge gains, taking us to 16.5 points. And, well, we've gone from 38th to 30th in one season, and that's a huge amount of ground we've made up. We've gone above everyone in here, basically. The only team that we were sort of neck and neck with, or that we've nearly got to there, is Slovenia in 31st, and we were literally not that far behind them either, and I think we can definitely get ahead of them next year. There's a big gap up to everybody else after that, but given that we're losing an even worse year next year, if we can put down like a 5-point year, we can get right onto those guys' coattails going into the next few seasons, and we should be in a much stronger spot. And what that means for us, though, is that we're going to be obviously up here in 30th spot, which means lots of gains are going to be made. So the first thing is that second place, pretty much just ham ruin every year, is now going to be in the Europa League, which gives them a chance to either win a round, which would be fantastic for money and stuff, or drop them down a round and actually get them sort of free progression to another round of the Conference League, which is just nice to have the freebie progression on that side of things. In addition, both of our other teams now in the Conference League get to skip a round. Now, they weren't winning in the first round very often, so I don't think they're going to do that for the time being in the second round, but at the very least, a free hit would put them in the third round of qualifying and maybe slightly better monetary gains, I guess. Needless to say, we're making the progress we need. There's not many big changes until we get to 23rd, and that's going to be a little while yet. That's going to take us to really do some heavy lifting, I think. Which brings us to the youth intake. That thing we don't talk about, but today we're going to talk about it because, well, it was still crap. But, and I should caveat this, most seasons now, the ones I've not been showing you, the best player we get in our youth intakes, they're always E-rated, even though we now have the best youth recruitment in the country. So we're getting the pick of the country's talents every year, no matter what now, but the country's talents are not particularly good, so we're still not going to get a great deal. Normally, we get one guy that's 2.5 stars at a push. This year, we got 6 of them that were considered 2.5 stars. And when you consider how much our squad has improved, these guys might actually be usable players for other Maltese sides, and as a result, we actually chose to sign them up. It's cool that we've got the Aegeus brothers in there too, and also an Icelandic dude. Because reasons. Just nice to have him there. I'll try to pick out the best one. I suppose it might actually be Dimek. You can see that he's actually got decent striker temp pulse. He's got pace, he's got acceleration, his composure is very low, but I think he could actually be a really solid, like, second-tier striker in the latter stages of his career when you consider that 2.5 stars in our squad is, bear in mind, a 3-star player is a star player in this league. So I think he could actually be a decent player for a second-tier side, given that by the time he's there, obviously the squad and the team will have got better. But still, I think he's probably the pick of the bunch. Might even get Malta caps one day, potentially. Speaking of that, Dick now qualifies as a Maltese citizen and will probably get a Malta call-up sometime in the near future, and I'm super excited for him. Looking at the data over the course of the season, Ronnie the top scorer with 26 and obviously the 18 assists. John still managed to bag 23 goals, and look at the XG that he created. He is so performing above that, and that's why I'm not super fussed if Ronnie was to leave, but he's just so creative, and particularly now playing as that Trek, he just does things, man. It's so exciting to watch him play. Ramos as well, despite only starting 16 matches, has got 19 goals for us. He's flourished into the new system as well. Pierre Camger and Lend with 15 goals and 10 assists. I mean, that's just dreamland numbers for a central midfielder. Afifi as well with 10 goals from... He's just amazing. I love him. And elsewhere, obviously, you know, Miroslav Lucic, players like Rodriguez and that, they haven't played very much in the second half of the season, of course, because of the slight change to the tactics. They are all being retrained to play roles within it, but some of them aren't going to make it. One of them I do believe is going to make it, though, is Jar Jar, who, despite not actually scoring a goal this year due to serious injuries, actually can play as a wingback, and it won't take him long to train there. He's not even that bad, so I think he could definitely have a role in the new Sirens, but the others might be slightly more complex. We are retraining Cespedes to play as the Trequartista, because he can kind of already do it, so he may well get a job in there potentially. He could, you never know, he might actually be the shallow replacement for all we know. As for how we're lining up, I already kind of showed you this, but generally speaking, the backline's been Lignon and Safer, with Jorgensen often playing as the libero, but obviously he's injured currently. Vidazini on the right-hand side of the back line. Garin mostly in that spot, but we're hoping to have someone else there. It's a shame we sold Milojevic a couple of years ago, really. Haidara on the left-hand side, but Palacio and Dick and Jar Jar can all cover that role as well. In the midfield, it's mostly been Afifi and Camger and Lend if we needed them, but Longello can also occupy that role, and obviously Guerrero and Shallow through the middle, sometimes Ramos too. Wisniewski's still been an absolute goat. We love him to death, and that's generally been how we've set up this year, but I think some of the new guys that I might give you a little preview of at the end might well change some of this lineup a little bit. Right, let's talk about the loan farm, because we have some stuff to discuss there too. So you can see they're up to 56 players. It was 57, but one of them had an early loan thing, and then he came back. For some reason, I was never given the option to extend it, and I don't really know why. I guess it's because the loan ended really early, and the game just got confused. Needless to say, the loan farm looks like this. In terms of the best player out on loan, obviously that's Shasley, but you can see loads of 2-star guys, which is very, very decent. That's a decent rating in our squad, and some reasonable potential as well, including one Barney as well out on loan. Lots of 4-star guys, lots of guys a little bit lower than that, but a lot of these players are players that have joined us this year. And you'll also note that Lutar, I mean, Birkikara have got 4 loans from us. Gudra have got a few. Hibs have 3 as well, but Lutar have got like 10. No, is that 10? It's 8 or 9. I think it's 9. Needless to say, not all of them actually played that much this year, so some of them may well come back, but they're still very, very good, and they'll definitely find other loans. Now, the thing I wanted to talk to you about is the fringe player system. So one thing a lot of people have noticed this year is that when loan bids come in for your players, very often the club will insist on a fringe player status for some reason. Even if that player is going to be like a star player level player, they always demand fringe player. So we found a way around it this year. There's a little system you can work through, and I'm going to talk you through it now. Unfortunately, I don't have an active example to show you because we're not in a window where I can actually loan someone, but this is how it works, so try to keep up. If they come in with fringe player, and this is why we don't use the dev list anymore, because it automatically accepted the loans, now we just do it manually, and it seems to do the same thing. So when they come in, they'll offer fringe player. What you want to do is set it to important player and then suggest. That's round 1. They'll go back to fringe player, set it back to important player, and then suggest. That's round 2. This is where it gets interesting. Next, you want to once again set it back to important player and hit suggest. Now, one of two things is going to happen here. Either nothing, and they'll set it back to fringe player. That's one option. If that happens, set it back to important player, suggest one more time, and they will agree to important player. Do not go into a fifth round. That will never work. They'll just not agree to it. 4 rounds is all you get. However, if on that third attempt, they instead bring it down to regular starter instead of fringe player, they'll always offer you a little bit of money there as well. What you do here, put it back to important player, but leave the money where it is, then hit suggest again, and then they'll come back to regular starter, offer you more money, and then you'll have to accept it at that. If you try to offer them or ask for anything else, they will then disagree. And those are the 2 ways that you can get either a regular starter and some money or an important player. It will give your players better squad roles out on loan. They'll get more football in theory. They might complain a little bit more if they don't get it, but at the very least, it seems to get them a little bit more cash. And you do earn a little bit of cash out of it too if you're really up for that kind of stuff, and we don't mind a little bit of cash for those loans too, and that's really worked for us over the course of this year. We've gone from I think low 40s to high 50s, and this summer I want to try and get us as close to 70 as we physically can, and just try to aim to get like 10 to 20 loans new each season. Now obviously that might drop with some of the ones coming back potentially, but over time we should slowly be able to build that loan farm up, and it's going quite nicely for us at the moment because we're really good, and a lot of the players, they might be a 2.5 star player, but that's really good for these teams. Probably 4 if not 4.5 stars in some of them. Finances this year are strong. They're very, very strong because obviously the European form, us actually winning games in Europe has earned us an extra couple of £1 million. In addition, gate receipts for some games, especially the Manchester United game and the game away at Reims, earned us a lot of cash too, which has been fabulous. And a few player sales on top. We've managed to keep the books nicely balanced, slowly building that money up, especially as we know we're going to need it when the player values fall through the floor in a couple of years. And our aim for this year is we're going to try our asses off to try to get in the Champions League group. I don't think it's going to happen, but I want to see how close we can get. The worst case scenario for us truly would be obviously Conference League, and I think we'd kill it in the Conference League, so it would certainly be a hell of a consolation prize. But I want to see if we can get in the Europa League again and try to get actually out of it into the knockouts for the first time. And I really want to see Hammer actually get into the Conference League groups this year, because if they could do that, the amount of points we could get together this year, we could be looking at like a 6-point season potentially if we play our cards right, and that would be bloody exciting for me. Although if we were to get in the Champions League, we'd get less points, but the money we would get would be astronomical. So needless to say, that's the plan. Hopefully you'll join us over on stream right now as we're doing some transfers. I'm just going to quickly give you a preview of one dude, perhaps. To give you an idea, we've got all of these guys joining us, and with the exception of probably Elvis Pashai here, these are all first-team players, basically. And you can see, I'll show you the most expensive one. This is Iore Melman. That's not his actual name. He's a right-sided player that's joining us from Colo Colo for £1.4 million. We couldn't believe it when he would actually talk to us. And he's barely going to be on any money. He's a 6'5" winger with 12 crossing and 16 dribbling, 14 finishing. We don't know what we're going to do with him, but he is utterly unbelievable. We think his unambitious personality is part of the reason why he was willing to join us instead of a massive side, but either way, he's unbelievable. He's called Melman because his 6'5" stature reminded chat of the giraffe from Madagascar, and Eeyore because he seems to have no faith in himself, basically. So Iore Melman is what he shall henceforth be called. The rest of these guys, though, you'll have to ask me about over on stream. So yes, thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Soon, we will have the big video. I'm looking at probably the latest would be the 9th of February because there's just so much stuff to get done, but I promise you, hopefully it's going to be worth it. So yes, there'll probably be another recap in between now and then, I suspect, maybe one more. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this, drop a like, join me over on stream, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Hold your gun, capybara, bye-bye.